I'm a person of Indian origin, and ever since the 1960s, people have been coming to India to find out the meaning of life. Are you ready to just get right to the point and get to the meaning of life? First, there's one thing we need to know how to do. Everybody, you need to play conductor for a second. Sing a long, low note like this. Come on, a little louder. Okay, we're going to use that a few times. Okay, so life is blank. What word do you think goes there? So one idea is that life is choice. So how do you make good choices? Well, one way is to know that, we have these different parts of the brain, right? So at the front of our brain, we have the prefrontal cortex, the thing that is logical and rational and has predictions, and everything we learn comes in through our prefrontal cortex. But it's a pretty recent development in evolution, so our prefrontal cortex is not that smart. A $5 calculator can still beat it in most things. So at the base of our brain, we have our ancient lizard brain, they call it, the amygdala. It only stores emotions and instincts and gut reactions. But what's interesting is that it is the culmination of everything we've ever learned, gets processed by our prefrontal cortex, and then is permanently stored as emotions in our amygdala. So, whereas we think that we're being smart by trying to make rational choices, and whenever you have a big choice in life, you kind of write down the pros and cons and try to make a very rational decision, actually, it's the other way around. You make better choices if you learn to trust your instinct better, since it really is the culmination of everything you've ever learned. Life is nothing but time. Life is the time between the minute you're born till the minute you die is what we call time. And if this is true, how do you use time wisely? Right now, if you found out that you only had 1 year to live, of course, you would spend this last year of your life very wisely. And if you only had 1 hour with an old friend that you hadn't seen in a long time, you would make the best of this hour instead of casually, watching TV. So it's important to be mostly future-focused. The people that are mostly future-focused, that delay gratification, that put a lot of weight into the future, are generally more successful, even happier, stuff like that. But if you're too future-focused, it comes at the expense of the present, things that require you to be very present-focused, such as relationships. So it's important to be somewhat present-focused, but it's also important to be somewhat past-focused, to realize that you can reinterpret your past, which helps you realize that you can write your own future. Okay, now, let's get more complicated. That same note again. Major third, little louder. Okay, what about life is memory? Think if you did everything right. You brushed your teeth and you ate your carrots and you lived to be 100 years old, but you couldn't remember any of it. What kind of life would that be? And most of us know that strange feeling when somebody says, "Hey, what did you do yesterday?" And you say, I don't know. So let's look at how you can make more memories. It's pretty obvious, actually. You just need to introduce lots of novelty into your life. You need to take those risky changes that right now any of you could decide to go do something extreme and go be a scuba diver in Iceland or go train horses in Mongolia, or all these things that you think you should be doing, you probably should be doing because your brain needs novelty to hook these memories onto. If you don't have novelty in your life, there's nothing for your memories to hook onto. So we need novelty. What else could go here? Oh, wait, sorry, the note again. First note, major third, give me the fifth. What if life is communication? So how can you learn to communicate well? What I think is interesting is learning about this kind of cross-cultural communication. A French friend of mine who lived for years each in Japan, Korea, and China taught me this. I asked something about the differences between the different countries. And he said, even when people are using English as this common business language, he said the cultural implications behind, he said, take the example of the word quality. He said, you're from America, right? So when I say quality, what do you think it means? And I said, it means it works. He said, right. Almost every American, when you say quality, that means it works. He said, well, guess what? In Japan, when you say quality, that means it's perfect. It's flawless. It doesn't have a single mistake. That's what quality means in Japan. And in Korea, when you say quality, that means it's brand new. Quality means new. New is quality. They're always looking for the newest thing. And he said in China, when you say quality, that means it gives you status. That's what quality means. So as we learn about these kind of different cultural things, even if we're speaking the same language, there's more context and stuff behind it. So what if life is communication? What else? Oh, wait, sorry, the note again. First one, major, fifth, flat seven. What if life is happiness? If life is happiness, how can you be happy? Well, there are two indicators. For one, if you try to dive into it straight on, if you ask the question too directly, too much, it makes you miserable. You need to approach it sideways. But an interesting thing also is people studying happiness for their whole life have found an interesting indicator that one of the most reliable indicators of someone's happiness is how much they trust their neighbors. What if life is learning? How can you best learn? The quick example to remind you is that they gave a bunch of kids a test that started out easy to give them confidence and then got impossibly hard so that every kid failed the test. But what's interesting is that half of the group, they told them these 6 words. They said, "You must be really good at this." And then half of them, they told them these 6 words. They said, "You must have worked really hard." And then they gave them the test again, or a different test, or a similar test, or something like that. What's fascinating is that the 50% that had been told, "You must be good at this," next time they took the test, they did 20% worse. Because they had failed the first one, they just had this internal representation of saying, "No, I'm not good at this." Whereas the half that had been told, "You must have worked really hard," they actually did 30% better next time they took the test, because now they had this internal representation that I can do this if I work hard. So they tried harder. So a 50% difference, minus 20, plus 30, all because of 6 little words. And the implication of this, especially for those of you with kids, is that if you tell your kids, "You are brilliant, you are great, you are good at this," you're doing them a horrible disservice. Okay, last one. Here we go. Back to the first note. Major third. Let's go one more. What if life is suffering? What if life is love? What if life is nothing but replicating DNA? Okay. All right, now, quick story. I've started studying Chinese a few years ago, just for fun. I think it's interesting. And what I learned is that these complicated-looking characters are made up out of simpler little word bits. So the character for thanks is made up of, you can see it there in the character kind of squished together left to right. It's words, body, and inch. So, anytime you're learning something, you do these memorization techniques to help you remember this. So I thought, wow, it's this ancient language, this ancient writing system. What does that mean? Words, body, inch. So I thought maybe it means when you say thanks, it means that these are the words that give a body an inch of respectable space. Thank you. Okay, that was my meaning for that. The character for you is person, bow, and small. And so to me that means oh, interesting. So to say you, the person you're speaking to, is the person that you give a small bow to. That's what it meant to me. I like this one. The character for name is evening plus mouth. So to me, this is romantic. Your name are the words that someone's mouth speaks only in the evening. The person that only knows your real name. And I like this one. The character for appearance is tree plus sheep. So this one I had to think for a long time about. How is it that appearance means a tree plus a sheep? So I kind of think of, a sheep appears a certain way, or I actually kind of pictured a sheep appearing from behind a tree. Ta-da! So that's what that meant to me. A related story, they always had these really cool esoteric lyrics that I loved. It was mostly about the music, but I loved their lyrics. What was fascinating is I read an interview with them once where they said that all of their lyrics were made by just writing evocative phrases onto little pieces of paper, and cutting them up and throwing them into a bowl. And then they would stir the bowl out and pull out phrases one at a time, and they would insist on putting them into the song in the order in which they pulled them out. And the reason for this is, he said, because whenever somebody's up on a stage and kind of yelling their feelings, their private feelings into a personal address system, you assume that it has a lot of meaning to them, that these lyrics have meaning, and that's why they're saying it. But they wanted to kind of mess with that and make it so that there is no meaning in what they're saying. It was just random, and that way the listener, assuming that there's meaning, puts meaning into these random lyrics. The listener created the meaning, not the artist. Love it. So, back to Chinese. I got this software program called Wenlin that is wonderful. It's like an etymological dictionary for Chinese characters. So any character, you can find out the ancient history of this character and where it comes from and what it used to be thousands of years ago and how it got to what it is. So I finally looked up all these characters I was curious about. So remember the evening and the mouth and the tree and the sheep, ta-da, all that? Turns out that because I'm learning simplified Chinese that they made after the Cultural Revolution in the 1960s, they took this ancient language and they simplified it to give it less strokes. And when they did that, they replaced a lot of the individual ingredients. They replaced it with phonetic sound-alikes to make it similar. So all of these things that I kind of put meaning into had no meaning whatsoever. I just made it all up myself. Back to this thing. It made me think about what other things in life have no meaning at all. So think about this. Like, what does it mean that you've been very successful so far in your life? Or what does it mean that someone new has come along and is more successful than you? What does it mean that you went to a very well-known school? What does it mean that all of your previous attempts at something have failed? What does it even mean that you're Indian? It has no meaning at all. It has no inherent meaning, that all of it is just stuff that you've projected onto it, that it, in itself, has no inherent meaning. So, as we get back to this, life is what? Go to the first note. Could we say that life is time, memory? What if life is communication? What if life is love? Wait, one more note, keep going. We could just say that life is just life. And it has no inherent meaning whatsoever, which means that you get to just create whatever meaning suits you and remove all those meanings that don't suit you. Because, they say that we're 70% water, but I think if you look under a microscope, we're 99% unused potential. And usually it's because of all of these meanings that we've projected onto things that keep us from doing what we want to do. If we find out that life has no meaning whatsoever, I think it's incredibly liberating and helpful. Thanks.